بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله خير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In the previous lesson we started looking at some of the forms and types of ibadah, of worship, and this was after we defined the meaning of worship. What is ibadah? What does it mean? And we gave a number of definitions in that regard. And then we start looking at the specific forms and types of worship. So from those that we discussed and explained in some detail was ad-du'a, supplication, and al-isti'ana, which means to seek aid, to seek assistance, and likewise al-istighatha. Istighatha is a specific form of isti'ana. It means to seek rescue, to seek a rescue from a calamity, from a hardship. And likewise al-dhabh, which is sacrifice, and similarly another which is making an oath, and likewise al-khawf, which is fear. And I believe we finished on that particular type of worship. And in the question and answers that we had, there was a specific question that was raised in relation to a person's intention. And if a person, for example, in an act of worship, he is looking for the worldly reward, then is his action acceptable to Allah or not? And the reason why this question appeared is because there are certain actions in the Sharia for which Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned worldly benefits, a worldly benefit. So if a person was to perform those actions seeking the worldly benefit that comes from those actions, then is his deed acceptable to Allah or not? And so there was a bit of a discussion in the question answer session, and I mentioned that if a person is only seeking the worldly benefit, then his deed will not be acceptable to Allah. And so I mentioned that I will come back to this question in the next lesson, which is today's lesson. And I referred you to a chapter in Kitab al-Tawheed. In Kitab al-Tawheed, there is a chapter which has the title, I vaguely recall the title, is when a man does an action of the hereafter for the world, for the sake of the world. When a person does a deed for the action of the hereafter for the purpose of the world. And in this chapter there is an ayah, a verse in the Quran, which is quoted by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala. And this ayah is Man kana yuridu al-hayata ad-dunya wa zinataha nuwaffi ilayhim a'malahum fiha wa hum fiha la yubkhasun. That whoever desires the life of this world and its glitter, then we shall pay them in full for their deeds therein, and they will not be, they will not fall short in anything. Meaning that the reward will be given to them in full for the deeds that they did, seeking the world. So, in explaining this ayah, this ayah is really speaking about those people who, in their deeds, they are only seeking the world. So in explanation of this ayah, when we look in the explanations of Kitab al-Tawheed, we see that the scholars say that there are 4 types of people who come under this verse. Sorry? This is in Surah Hud, Surah 11, verse 15. Verse 15. So, the scholars in the explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed, they mentioned that there are 4 types of people who come under this ayah. The first of them are the hypocrites, al-munafiqun. Because the hypocrites, all of their deeds are done for the world. Because they disbelieve inwardly. And so their deeds are only done in order to gain a worldly benefit or to prevent a loss in the world. Right? So to prevent loss in wealth, in position, in status, or to gain some benefit. This is how the hypocrites, they don't really believe, but they are motivated to protect and defend themselves, in the worldly sense. So all of their deeds are completely vain and nullified. This is the first category of people, and they are the worst of all of them. The second category, coming down one level less now, is those people who do their deeds out of ar-riya, which is to show off. To do a deed, to be seen of men, to be praised by men, to be spoken of by men, for one's reputation. And this is where we see, as we see some of the texts, the ahadith which mention about a person who, he acquired knowledge, so that it might be said he's an alim, or he learned the Quran, so that it might be said that he is a reciter, or that he gave charity, that it might be said he's generous, or that he made jihad, that it might be said that he's brave and courageous. Right? So these are deeds which are done out of ar-riya. And they are seeking some worldly, benefit in that regard. So these are people who seek ar-riya wa sum'ah. Right? This is their motivation. This is the second category. The third category are those people who are motivated by wealth. Al-mal. And the examples given by the scholars is that they say, for example, a person, he goes to an Islamic institution, he acquires Sharia knowledge, and his only motivation, his only intent is that he can get a job. So that he can work and earn a living. Right? Or for example, someone learns the Quran. He's learning the Quran because he wants to work as a Quran teacher and earn wealth. Right? This is his motivation behind, seeking and acquiring knowledge. Right? It is for the purpose of mal, for the purpose of wealth. It is not because of, fearing Allah, worshipping Allah, correcting one's actions, and all the rest of the things that a person hopes for, which lead to what is in the hereafter. But it's just like it's something by which he is going to, build an occupation and earn a living and so on and so forth. And you find people like this. You find there are many people like this. When you go to, for example, the Islamic University of Medina, and you see many, there's hundreds and hundreds of people who come there from different places, different cities, different towns, different lands. Many of them are sent by recommended to go by the governments, and to some of these people, when you speak to them, and it's just something that they, when they come, they'll go back and they'll just get a job working in a school because that's the only way to earn a living. Right? So this now is the third category, those people who do deeds of the hereafter, but they do them for the purpose of the world. And that now is the third category. Now we come to the fourth category, and this really gets to the crux of the question that was raised in the previous lesson. And so before we can speak about the fourth category, we should understand that in the Sharia, there are 2 types of deeds. There are those deeds for which there is no worldly benefit mentioned in the Sharia at all. Rather, the benefit is only in terms of the hereafter. So for example, the salah, the prayer, for example, the zakah, for example, and many other deeds for which there isn't any worldly reward or worldly benefit which is actually mentioned. So these deeds are done only for the sake of Allah. They are done only for the reward. So basically these deeds, the reward is in the hereafter. There is no reward that is mentioned in the life of this world. So these deeds, obviously they are done for the sake of Allah. They are done to seek and pursue that particular reward. And anyone who does these deeds for something else, again, it falls into ar-riya, or the other categories that have preceded. But there are other deeds that are mentioned that for which there is a worldly benefit or a worldly reward. To give one example, the hadith which mentions that whoever wants his life to be expanded, his lifespan to be lengthened, and his rizq to be increased, then let him keep the ties of kinship. Let him keep the ties, keep the family ties. This is one example where this is a righteous deed, but there's a worldly benefit mentioned for this righteous deed. An increase in sustenance, an increase in your lifespan. And likewise, there are other texts like that as well that relate to, for example, the curing of a disease by giving charity, for example, or things of that nature. So now you can see that in these types of examples, there are two things which apply now. There is that which is in the hereafter of the reward that a person receives for doing these deeds, and there is that which is a benefit in the life of this world. So, the answer to the question, and coming to the fourth category now, is that whoever did any of these types of deeds, and his only desire, his only intention, was to achieve the worldly benefit, that's all he is seeking, then he comes under this verse. He comes under this verse, Man kana yuridu al-hayata ad-dunya wa zinataha. So this person, for example, coming back to our example, a person, he's ill, suffering from, lots of pain and things of that nature, chronic illness. And so he gives lots of charity, and the only thing that he is wanting, desiring, is that he wants this pain to go away. He wants this pain to be removed. As for seeking and desiring what is with Allah in the hereafter, then this is of no concern to him at all. Right? He's only seeking the worldly benefit. This person, he comes under this ayah. Man kana yuridu al-hayata ad-dunya wa zinataha nuwaffi ilayhim a'malahum fiha. Whoever desires the life of the world and its glitter, we shall pay them in full therein. And then the ayah continues in the next ayah that in the hereafter they will have nothing, their deeds will be in vain, and so on and so forth. But as for the person, when he does these deeds, he is seeking the reward in the hereafter, and he is seeking the benefit in this world. So he combines these two things together. Then there is no harm in that. This deed is now acceptable to Allah, because he is not seeking just purely the world from this deed. Right? He is seeking that which is with Allah in the hereafter. And as for that which is in the world, then the Sharia has mentioned a benefit in the world for these deeds. And there's no harm if he seeks them as well and wants them as well, in addition to seeking that which is with Allah Azza wa Jal. So this basically answers that question that was raised in the previous lesson about doing those deeds for which the Sharia has mentioned a worldly benefit and seeking that worldly benefit. As long as you are seeking that which is with Allah in the hereafter alongside that benefit, and it is not only just that benefit, then you will not enter into this ayah. Alright? So, in summary, this ayah, meaning those people, which refers to those people who do deeds of the hereafter for the sake of the world. There are four types. The hypocrites, those who show off, do it for ar-riya, for praise. Thirdly, those who do it for wealth. And fourthly, those who do a deed for the sake of a worldly benefit alone. These are the four people who come under this ayah. So now coming to continuing our lesson then, we start today with looking at ar-raja. Ar-raja as a form and type of worship. So what is ar-raja? Ar-Raja we translate in English as hope, to have hope. And the meaning of it here is تأميل الخير فيما لا يقدر عليه إلا الله, which means to hope in some goodness which no one has power over to bring it about except Allah alone. To place your hope in acquiring some goodness, some khair, for which no one has the power and ability over except Allah Azza wa Jal. This now is an act of worship. This type of hope is an act of worship. And it is not permissible for anyone, for any believer, to hope in other than Allah to achieve something which only Allah has the power and ability over. So to make this clear, this does not include things that we hope in the affairs of the world, which are common things, like which people have the ability over. Like, for example, you might hope in a person that he gives you some wealth, or that he gives you some assistance. This is not considered from worship. This is not ibadah. Because these affairs are affairs in which people have the ability, they have the power, they have the resources, they have the means to help you and assist you. So this is not to be counted as ibadah. And you can say to a person, or so-and-so, I hope from you that you give me such and such, or I hope from you that you aid me in such and such. There is nothing wrong in this at all. But if you place hope in a creature amongst the creatures, in something for which only Allah Azza wa Jal has the power and ability, like, for example, curing an illness, or that you enter him into paradise, or that you forgive his sins or save him from the fire, or that he is saved from calamities. Right? All of these things only Allah Azza wa Jal has the power and ability over. So to place this type of hope in other than Allah, this is shirk, and this is worshipping other than Allah. And this is what we see from many of the Sufis, from those who are attached to the graves and the tombs. We see that they actually direct al-khawf, fear, that we discussed in the previous lesson. And likewise ar-raja, which is hope, They put their fear and their hope in other than Allah. So for example, they will come to these tombs, these mausoleums, and like you see millions of people in Egypt traveling every year, at a specific point in time, traveling to a place called Tanta, and to this grave, this tomb of Ahmad al-Badawi, and they go there, and in their heart there is a hope. There is a hope that, that maybe by this devotion, that this wali, he will grant them a child which they've been trying for many, many years. Or that he will relieve them of this illness that they've been suffering from for many, many years. Or that he will remove this pain, this excruciating pain that they've had in their arm or their leg that they can't get rid of. So this now is a type of hope, it is a type of raja, which is clearly shirk with Allah Azza wa Jal. And as we said, this is completely different to those things which are adi, which are habitual and normal in the day-to-day normal course of life, where we hope in people that they benefit us in some way because they have the ability to over that thing. You hope that someone gives you a job. You hope that someone gives you a lift. You hope that someone. So all these things are adi. They are perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong with them at all. So this is ar-raja. The two types of ar-raja. One which is adi and one which is actually worship, which is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. Then after this is at-tawakkul. At-tawakkul is also from the types and forms of ibadah, of worship. And at-tawakkul, its meaning is tafweedul umur, tafweedul umur, tafweedul umur ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wal-i'timad alayhi. Wal-i'timad alayhi. Which is to resign or consign, to leave all of the affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to depend upon Him alone. And so we see in the Quran, وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. So place your reliance or your trust upon Allah if indeed you are believers. We see in one ayah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5, verse number 23. And likewise, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, فَاعْبُدْهُ وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَيْهِ. So worship Allah and place your reliance upon Him. Surah Hud, which is the 11th surah, verse number 120, 123. And also the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا. In this ayah, we see that Allah Azza wa Jal has reversed the order of the words, because normally this would be وَتَوَكَّلُوا أو فَتَوَكَّلُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ. فَتَوَكَّلُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ. Place your reliance upon Allah. But the jar and the majroor, ala Allah, is moved to the front of the sentence. To the front of the sentence. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَتَوَكَّلُوا. And the meaning this occurs often in the Quran with many of these types of worship. And the meaning this provides in the Arabic language is that يُفِيدُ الْحَصْرِ, which means that it refers to limiting. Right? That this tawakkul should only be made upon Allah Azza wa Jal and upon no one besides Him at all. Meaning that it is restricted only to Allah Azza wa Jal. فَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And likewise, in the ayah in Surah Al-Anfal, at the beginning of Surah Al-Anfal, Surah 8, verse number 2, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. Indeed, the believers are those who, when Allah is mentioned, their hearts shake and their eyes shed tears. When Allah is mentioned, their hearts quiver and shake, and when His signs are recited to them, when His verses are recited to them, it increases them in faith. It increases them in iman. And upon their Lord do they place their trust. Notice again, وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. The word order has been reversed. Normally it would say وَيَتَوَكَّلُونَ عَلَى رَبِّهِمْ. وَيَتَوَكَّلُونَ عَلَى رَبِّهِمْ, mentioning the verb first, and the وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ, the jar and the majroor after that, but it's been reversed. وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. So the action is delayed, and وَعَلَى اللَّهِ, that is وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ, is brought to the front. This means only upon their Lord do they place their trust. This is the effect of this change in wording. Only upon their Lord do they place their trust. And so this clearly means that they do not place their trust upon other than Allah, because this is not permissible. So this now is tawakkul. Tawakkul. Tawakkul, what we mean by tawakkul is that you use the ways and means with the knowledge that Allah is the creator of the ways and means. And so therefore your heart is attached not to the ways and means, but to Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, to help explain this, what I've just explained, to put it concretely in your minds, let's just give an example. So let's say that you are about to set off on a journey, and as you know, when you travel in a car, and you know that there's going to be bad weather, and you know that there could be something wrong with your car, so as part and parcel of tawakkul, you check your engine oil, you check the water level, the antifreeze, the water level. You check the indicators are working fine. Your mirrors are fine. All of these are things that you do. Likewise, when you get in the car, you wear the seat belt, and as you are driving, you stick to the regulations and the laws. You stop at the red lights. So all of this now is you taking the ways and means. These are the asbab, the ways and means. This is part and parcel of tawakkul. So, now, if you believe and you think that because I've taken all these ways and means, and your heart now becomes attached to the ways and means, in other words, you are relying upon the ways and means in order to remain safe. Right? So here now your attachment is to these things. However, it could be the case that no matter all the precautions that you've taken, you've done absolutely everything by the letter to ensure your safety. But little do you know that some idiot on the other side of the road could be on his phone or something else or doing something, and he swerves, he goes over the barrier, comes right in front of you, and you crash and you are dead. Now this is something that's totally outside of your control. It's outside of your control. These are other ways and means which are in the control of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So, with this example, you take the ways and means, but your heart is attached to Allah, because Allah is the creator of all of the ways and means. Right? You cannot make your heart to be attached to the ways and means alone, because the effect, which in this case is safety and preservation of life, is not dependent only on those things alone. There are other things as well. Right? So you take the ways and means, we believe in the ways and means, we take the ways and means, but we rely upon Allah Azza wa Jal. And that's why there is a statement from the Salaf regarding tawakkul and the ways and means, and they say there's a statement which they say, which is al-iltifat ila al-asbab, الالتفات إلى الأسباب قدح في التوحيد. قدح في التوحيد. There are three parts to this statement. الالتفات إلى الأسباب قدح في التوحيد. This means that if you turn and focus on the asbab, like in our example that I just gave about the car safety, and you take all the ways and means and you turn just to them and rely just upon them, this now is a revilement upon Tawheed. This now is a revilement upon Tawheed. ومحو الأسباب أن تكون أسبابا قدح في الأقل. And to erase the ways and means, to negate the ways and means from considering them to be ways and means, this is a revilement of the intellect. So this would mean, in our example, that if a person comes along and says, you know what, forget checking my tires, and forget checking the oil, and forget using the indicators, and forget sticking to the highway code, and forget stopping at red lights, and forget all of this is nonsense. If Allah wills, I'll be safe. I'll be safe. If Allah wills, I'll be safe. Right? So here now, a person is denying and negating that the ways and means are ways and means. Right? This is similar to a person saying, forget taking food. If Allah wills that my hunger will be removed, it'll be removed. So forget taking the food. Or, forget getting married. If Allah wills, I'll have children anyway. So what's the point in getting married? These two are the same. Right? To deny the asbab from being asbab is a revilement in intellect. Just like a person says, if Allah wills, I will, my thirst will disappear, so what's the point in drinking water? It'll happen anyway, if Allah has willed it. Right? Rather, if Allah has willed it, He's only willed it by way of the ways and means. So if Allah has willed your thirst to be removed, then it will be by way of that which removes the thirst. Just in the same way, if Allah has willed for you to be safe and your life to be preserved and protected, it will be by way of taking the ways and means. Even though to Allah belongs, all of the asbab, and He decrees whatever He wills. So that's the second part of the statement. To negate or to deny that the ways and means are ways and means to achieve things, this is a revilement in intellect. And finally, to turn away from the asbab, al-iltifat anil asbab qadhun fit tawakkul. To turn away from the asbab is a revilement of tawakkul. Your tawakkul is not complete unless you take the asbab. Right? So this is a statement that is said from some of the scholars in relation to the issue of at-tawakkul. So at-tawakkul is only for Allah Azza wa Jal, and this is what we mean, that we take the ways and means, we believe in them, that Allah has decreed them, we take them, but our hearts are attached to Allah and not to the ways and means. Now, there is something, again, we distinguish between tawakkul and between something else which is called at-tawkeel. At-tawkeel. There is at-tawakkul and there is at-tawkeel. At-tawkeel means to simply delegate someone, to entrust someone with something with which he has the power and ability over. Right? So, you might entrust someone to go and buy something for you. You might entrust someone to run your business for you. You might entrust someone to look after your children or your family. This now is called at-tawkeel. At-tawkeel. This is not the same as at-tawakkul. At-tawakkul is the heart's attachment to Allah and dependence upon Allah, relying upon Allah, because He is the creator of all of the ways and means. And through these ways and means do effects arise. Not independently, but by the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal. And in conjunction with other asbab as well that have to come together if Allah so decrees. So therefore your heart is attached to Allah. In this case, you are simply entrusting someone with something, and in the worldly sense, and this is perfectly permissible. We see that the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he used to entrust someone who would go and buy things from him, and likewise he would entrust he would employ certain people or put certain people in charge of certain affairs that he would delegate to be in charge of certain affairs for him. And likewise, the Ashabul Kahf in Surah Al-Kahf, the people of the cave, we see that they as a group, they entrusted one amongst them to go and to find food for them. As we see in the ayah, فَبَعَثُوا أَحَدَكُمْ بِوَرَقِكُمْ هَذِهِ إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا فَلْيَأْتِكُمْ بِرِزْقٍ مِّنْهُ وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا. So they said, send one amongst you with this note, or with this note, some I guess it was some wealth or some money, and to the city, and go and find the purest food, and let him come back with it, with some sustenance, and let him be cautious and take care lest anyone should be aware, lest anyone should be be aware of them. So here they entrusted one person. This is tawkeel, to entrust a person to do something for you. So this is tawkeel. A tawkeel is jaiz. It is permissible to entrust a duty to someone else or something else. But as for tawakkul, it is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. So this now leads us to the next type of worship mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam, and this is al-inaba. Al-inaba. And al-inaba means to, the meaning of al-inaba is ar-ruju' wa-tawbah. Ar-ruju' wa-tawbah, which means to return. Ar-ruju', to return. And at-tawbah, again to return and to repent. And they both have the same meaning. We see in the Quran, in Surah Az-Zumar, Surah 39, verse 54, وَأَنِيبُوا إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَأَسْلِمُوا لَهُ وَأَنِيبُوا إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَأَسْلِمُوا لَهُ. And return to your Lord and submit to Him. Now this inaba, the meaning, as we said, the meaning of al-inaba is that the heart returns back from every single thing that is besides Allah. Right? In other words, you turn away from every single thing that is besides Allah Azza wa Jal, and you turn only to Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the meaning of al-inaba. Al-inaba. And so this means that the heart is never attached to anything besides Allah. It turns back from attachment to anything besides Allah until it is only ever attached to Allah Azza wa Jal. Now in reality, as the scholars explain, this particular form of worship, al-inaba, is something that doesn't really exist on its own. Rather, al-inaba, this state of worship, this feeling, is something that comes about in the presence of other actions of the heart. Right? So for example, when you have ar-raja, hope only in Allah. You have al-khawf, fear only of Allah. You have al-mahabba, your love is only for Allah. So when you do these things, it means that your heart then is basically turning away from fear of other than Allah. It is turning away from hope in other than Allah. It is turning away from a type of love that is due only to Allah, and therefore it's turning away with that love from other than Allah. So from all these directions, as you start turning away from other than Allah, you are making inaba to Allah. You are making inaba to Allah. That's why the scholars explain that this type of worship, al-inaba, is something that doesn't exist on its own, but rather in the presence of other affairs and types of worship. And so here we see وَأَنِيبُوا إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَأَسْلِمُوا لَهُ. This is the proof, the ayah, that return to your Lord and submit only to Him. So, this then would be different, for example, a muwahhid, whose heart turns only to Allah, because it fears only Allah, it hopes only in Allah, it makes oath only to Allah, it makes tawakkul only upon Allah, it makes isti'ana, istighatha, all those things that we've already discussed. As opposed to, for example, when you see a grave worshipper, he comes to the grave, stands in front of the grave, and upon his false belief that this wali is someone who can aid him and support him and intercede for him without the permission of Allah, and the various other conditions, that's his belief. So he stands there, and you see that his heart is full of awe, it's full of fear, it's full of love. He's humbling himself. There's a state of being of his heart which shows that his inaba, he is returning to this individual. His heart is not making inaba to Allah Azza wa Jal. Rather, it is making inaba to this other being besides Allah Azza wa Jal. Why? Because his hope, his fear, his love, his tawakkul, his isti'ana, his istighatha, all of it, he's directing these forms of worship to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. And so therefore, this inaba is therefore now it is to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the meaning of al-inaba. The heart of a muwahhid is in a certain state. It is stripped of attachment to other than Allah. It turns back in its associations from other than Allah until it is only attached to Allah and only returning back to Allah. This is the meaning of al-inaba. Al-inaba. Then after this there is al-mahabba. Al-mahabba is love, and al-mahabba has a very mighty position and a status as it relates to as it relates to worship. And this is obviously the mahabba of Allah, loving Allah Azza wa Jal. And this mahabba then is basically of two types, as the Shaykh mentions. The first type, is the mahabba of ibadah. The love, the type of love which actually constitutes worship. This is worship. And this is when the love that you have in your heart has present with it al-dhul wal-khudu'. Meaning that alongside this love, you are also humbling yourself, humiliating yourself to the one to whom you are loving. This is when this now becomes a type of ibadah, a type of worship. And this type of muhabba, this type of love is only due to Allah. Why? How is this? This is because we love Allah Azza wa Jal, and then we humble ourselves to Him because we obey Him. We feel humility in ourselves. We feel that we are lower that we are humble and lowered and submissive towards Allah Azza wa Jal. So in a similar manner, if someone came along, and again coming back to the grave worshipper, and we find that he loves this wali or this person in this grave, and alongside that he is submissive and humble, and he goes about doing deeds out of humility and submissiveness to this being, out of fear, for example, that some harm might come to him or whatever. This now is a love which has with it a type of dhul, which is lowering and humbling oneself, and khudu', which is submitting oneself. Right? This now is ibad. This is now mahabba, which constitutes worship. Right? And this type would be shirk with Allah Azza wa Jal. This is mahabba shirkiyah. This is a type of mahabba which is shirk. And this is the nature of the love of the idol worshippers, the mushrikun, in all their various forms and types, that they have for their deities. As Allah mentions about them in the Quran, that amongst mankind are those who love, those besides Allah. They love them in a way with such an intense love that is due only to Allah. Right? So this type of love here is that which has coupled with it this dhul and khudu. The second type of mahabba is al-mahabba al-tabi'iyya. Al-mahabba al-tabi'iyya. This is just a natural type of love that Allah has put as an instinct in everybody. You love wealth, you love your wife, you love your parents, you love the one who is kind and benevolent to you, right? All these things are natural, is a natural type of love. And this type of love, there is no dhul, there is no khudu', there is no humbling oneself, humiliating oneself, lowering oneself. There's none of these things which are present. This is just a natural type of love that you have for things that you like, which are pleasing to you, which give you pleasure, which benefit to you, and so on and so forth. So, now these things, obviously this is permissible. It's a permissible type of love, but only on the condition that it does not come in the way of your love of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that you do not put the love of these things in front of your love of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because then this now becomes a mahabba which is haram, which is unlawful, which is not permissible. So here we read in the ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal has gave a severe warning for people who fall into this, of putting love of other things. This is not mahabba shirkiyah, but it is mahabba which is unlawful, where you put the love of other things ahead of the love of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we see in Surah At-Tawbah, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله. الآية, to the end of the ayah. Say, if your fathers and your sons and your brothers and your wives or your spouses and your close relatives and the wealth which you have acquired and the trade in which you fear a loss and the abodes, the homes in which you find pleasure, is more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His path, to the end of the ayah where it mentions the threat of Allah implementing His threat. So therefore all of these things, these are all affairs of the world. Right? Your fathers, your parents, your children, your brothers, your wives, your families, the wealth, your trade. These are all things that basically we like and we have an affiliation to. Allah has threatened us if we put these things ahead of our love of Allah and the Messenger and striving in His path. So this is mahabba, which is unlawful. So this then is al-mahabba. We move on to the next form and type of worship, which is al-khashya. Al-khashya is in fact a type of khawf. We've already discussed khawf in the previous lesson, fear. Al-khashya is just simply a type of khawf. Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِي. Do not fear them, or do not have awe of them, but have awe of me, fear me. Which means that the khashya, to have awe and fear of the creation, it is not permissible to put that in front of the khashya of Allah Azza wa Jal. الَّذِينَ يُبَلِّغُونَ رِسَالَاتِ اللَّهِ وَيَخْشَوْنَهُ وَلَا يَخْشَوْنَ أَحَدًا إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Allah mentions this as a quality. Those who convey the messages of Allah and who fear Him, and they do not fear anyone except Allah. لا يخشون إلا الله أحدا إلا الله. So this is khashya. It's a type of fear. We already discussed fear in the previous lesson. Then he mentioned الرغبة والرهبة. الرغبة والرهبة, again, they are a type of hope and fear. الرغبة والرهبة. الرغبة can best be difficult to translate, but let's say you can call it hope or aspiration. Hope or aspiration. You aspire to something. You hope in something. And ar-rahbah is again, it's a type of fear or apprehension. Something that you fear and you want to keep away from. This is ar-raghbah wal-rahbah. So ar-raghbah is something that you hope for something which is with Allah. At-tama' fima inda Allah. That you are hoping and desiring something that is with Allah. Inna ilallahi raghibun. Indeed, we hope, or we hope in that which is with Allah, or we hope in Allah. And so this means to attach oneself with Allah, to aspire for that which is with Allah, to for that which He gave us for those who obey Him, and to put Allah's pleasure ahead of everyone else. This is ar-raghbah. And as for ar-rahbah, this is a type of fear, a type of apprehension. Wa iyaya farhabun. Wa iyaya farhabun is a command in the Quran. So fear me alone. Apprehend meaning be fearful of me alone. And so therefore it's obligatory that we have this rahbah only for Allah. We fear only Allah. We have khashya only of Allah, not the creation. We don't put them on a level near to Allah or equal to Allah, such that we are apprehensive of them, we fear them, which then leads us to abandon obedience to Allah and instead please the creation. Right? So this is raghbah and rahbah. Fear and hope, or aspiration and apprehension. Then the Shaykh goes on to mention another form and type of worship, which is at-ta'alluh. At-ta'alluh, which again is devotion. At-ta'alluh is another word for mahabba. At-ta'alluh means at-ta'abbud, which means devotion, and it refers to that which is done out of love. Right? We love a thing, so we worship a thing. This is at-ta'alluh. At-ta'alluh. To give devotion to that which we love. This again is the right of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the meaning of uluhiyyah. This is the meaning of uluhiyyah. This belongs only to Allah. It is not permissible therefore that we take another ilah, that which we worship, that which we show love, and therefore worship in a manner that is due only to Allah Azza wa Jal. وهو الذي في السماء إله وفي الأرض إله وهو الحكيم العليم. He is the one who is the deity, the true deity in the heaven and the true deity upon the earth or in the earth. Which means that He is the one who is worshipped by those in the heaven and He is the one who is worshipped by those in the earth. He's only one deity, and He's worshipped by those in heaven and by those in the earth. So this is at-ta'alluh. It just means generally devotion, worshipping that whom we love. Then we have ar-ruku' was-sujud. So these are now outward types of worship, outward manifestations of worship. All the previous ones, many of them were actually the actions of the heart. Now ar-ruku' was-sujud. Ar-ruku', bowing, is an act of worship. It is not for other than Allah. A person should not bow or lower himself to anyone out of veneration of them. This is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. When you do this out of humility and venerating someone, then this is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. And likewise, even more so, prostration is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. A person does not prostrate to an idol, nor to a grave, nor to a tomb, nor to any, highly respectable person of having status. Rather, it is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. And we see that some of the previous nations, like the Persians and the Romans, they used to actually bow and prostrate to their leaders. On one occasion, Mu'adh bin Jabal, he actually saw the Persians and the Romans, he saw them doing this. So when he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to prostrate to the Prophet ﷺ because he saw those people doing it out of respect for their leaders. So he wanted to show the same respect. And we see that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he prohibited him from that, prevented him from that. And he said, if I was to command anyone to prostrate to anyone else, then I would have commanded the woman to prostrate to her husband, due to the great right that he has upon her. So this sujood is not for anyone besides Allah Azza wa Jal. And we can conclude, and we'll continue inshallah with one or two more. Yeah, we'll finish in fact. But since we're on this point, we see that in this hadith, if I was to command anyone to prostrate to a woman, then I would command her to prostrate to her husband, due to the great right that he has upon her. So, since we mentioned this hadith, we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He has established a certain type of relationship between various people in the society, between a husband and wife, between parents and children, and the other way around as well, children and parents, between the subjects and the ruler, between the subjects and the scholars, the ulama. We see that all of these types of relationships have been clearly defined and guidance has been given to us. And as a consequence of all of this, we see that there is cohesion and there is coherence and there is stability in a Muslim society that adheres to these things. For example, when a child respects his parents, when the parents respect the children and fulfill their duties, when a husband respects the rights of the wife, when the wife respects the rights of the husband, when the subjects respect the rights of the rulers, when they likewise respect the rights of the scholars. Right? In all of this we see that there is a cohesion. And likewise, there are certain things which are the right of certain people to engage in. So the scholars are the ones who give fatwa and teach knowledge. The rulers are the ones who look after, who maintain order and provide security. Right? The husband, the men are the ones who have been given certain tasks. And likewise women have been given certain tasks. And some of those rights are so great and so highly emphasized. Like for example, look at the right of the ruler. The ruler has such a right upon his subjects that even if the ruler was to be tyrannical and oppressive and unjust, and if he was to take your wealth, beat your back, we have still been commanded in the Sharia to still obey him. As we see in the hadith of Hudhayfa, وَإِن ضَرَبَ ظَهْرَكَ وَأَخَذَ مَالَكَ أو ضُرِبَ ظَهْرُكَ أو أُخِذَ مَالُكَ, according to the way it's read. Even if your back is beaten and your wealth is taken, still, this is a great and mighty right that belongs to the ruler. Why? Because there are far-reaching wisdoms behind this command, right? Because it's to maintain stability in the land and to maintain the affairs to run their course, and people, to avoid a greater wide-scale fitna. In a similar manner, we see that a woman, that the man has a tremendous right upon the female to obey him and to honor him and to respect him. And this is the way that society remains cohesive. And you will see in these nations that we live, all of which run upon socialism, and socialism is really something, the underlying premise of which is to break down all of these relationships. To break down all of these relationships between the husband and wife, between the parents and children, between the children and parents, between the ruler and the ruled, and to isolate every single individual so that he's just one individual. And then it leads to other things like confiscation of private property and whatever else. So the point being here is that when you look at these societies, you see them arguing about, you see them nowadays, women hating men and men hating women, and who should be paying the divorce? Is it the woman who should be paying because they demand equal rights and they are equal, or is it the man that should pay the divorce settlement? And all these things you see in the society. When you look at the social ills and the problems that they are having in their societies, you see all of this is because they do not recognize the realities that we see mentioned in the guidance that Allah Azza wa Jal has given to us. And so therefore they will be in a downward spiral. And because of these problems you see in their societies, the population rate is plummeting. They're not having children, right? Their populations will die out within how many generations. This is what they're very scared of, right? Because all these individual relationships, men and women, and the bond that should be between them, and all these other social ills and plagues that they have in their societies, like homosexuality and lesbianism, whatever else, all of that is bringing so many problems and causing their societies to spiral downwards into destruction. Right? So my point in saying all of this is we are not shy from mentioning this. We are proud of this guidance from Allah Azza wa Jal. We're not shy. We do not apologize. We're not sorry. We find that this is guidance from Allah Azza wa Jal, and we are proud of this guidance. Take it or leave it. This is how we should respond to these people, and not cower and take the back foot and be deceived by these slogans that they come out with, freedom, equal rights. All this is just nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's meaningless nonsense. Just look at the state of these societies before you start believing in these slogans. So to continue, we just have a short bit left. Inshallah, we'll conclude. Al-khushu', which is, again, khushu' is to humble oneself, and at-tadhallul and at-ta'zeem. We'll finish by mentioning a few words about each of these things. So al-khushu' is an action of the heart, and it is basically your heart becoming soft, humbling and becoming soft. And this is for none but Allah Azza wa Jal. Your heart doesn't become soft and become soft and gentle out of fear for anyone besides Allah Azza wa Jal. Because this type of khushu' is something that involves venerating someone, thinking someone to be great. So when you have khushu' of someone, it means like a type of veneration. Your heart is softening for such a person because you believe that this is only for Allah Azza wa Jal. Your heart softens for him. You cry out of fear of him. You have khashya of him. And thus we see in Surah Al-Mu'minun, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ هُمْ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ رَبِّهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ. Indeed, those who out of the khashya of the Lord, they are fearful. Likewise, at-tadhallul, which means again to humble oneself and to lower oneself. It's al-khudu', Again, it's submissiveness, as we've already mentioned before. It is from the types of worship. So we see that again, ibadah is al-hub wal-dhul. Al-hub wal-dhul. Love and humbling oneself by complying and giving obedience. And this is at-tadhallul. This is for none but Allah Azza wa Jal. And finally, at-ta'zeem. At-ta'zeem is veneration. To venerate someone. And this is again an act of worship when it is combined with khudu', when you humble yourself to someone else. And to direct this to other than Allah, this again is shirk with Allah Azza wa Jal. Rather we venerate Allah, we make ta'zeem of Allah, and we humble ourselves to Him, because this is ibadah of Allah Azza wa Jal. So at this point we've mentioned all of these different forms and types of worship. It is very important that you understand each of these. Ad-du'a, just as a recap now, ad-du'a we mentioned, al-isti'ana, al-istighatha, al-dhabh, sacrifice, another, making oaths, al-khawf, al-raja, al-tawakkul, al-inaba, al-mahabba, al-khashya, al-raghba wal-rahba, al-ta'alluh, al-ruku', al-sujud, al-khushu', al-tadhallul, al-ta'zeem. At this point, the Shaykh now goes on to say, or to mention all of the specific evidences for each of these acts of worship. And we will leave that inshallah ta'ala for our next lesson. It just simply mentions the ayat with some brief commentary. So we'll leave that discussion inshallah ta'ala to the next lesson. It's important at this point then that we understand these forms and types of worship, what they mean, how to explain them, that some of them have different types, and some types shirk and other types are just natural and normal, other types are prohibited. So all these classifications a person should be clear and understand them well. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.